Welcome to the Flavor Fest Urban Leadership Podcast, where we talk to innovative artists, creative pastors, church planners, entrepreneurs, and people creating movements. Our goal is to inspire and equip you in ministry, music, and the marketplace. I'm your host, Tommy, Urban D. Kyllonen. What's up, guys? Thank you for joining us today for the Flavor Fest Urban Leadership Podcast. And we got an incredible guest with us today. We got a young man he's got incredible wisdom, incredible talent. I remember when he first came to Flavor Fest, he was walking around and he was like in awe. I mean, he was just a teenager, young buck, and he was checking out, he was meeting all these rappers, and he had dreams to do music and ministry. I remember that it wasn't too long ago, just about 4 years ago. And so since then, it's been amazing to watch his journey and watch God's favor on his life, and for God to just drop lyrics and songs and ideas, and for him to literally create a movement. I know some of you guys are watching this right now, or you're listening to it because you would consider yourself a zealot. That's right, he created this movement with the Zealots. I'm talking about my man Zauntee. That's right. And so, hey, if you don't know him, you're gonna get to know him on this podcast. He's got an incredible story. He's got a message. Even though he's a young man, he's got some meat behind what he's talking about. I'm super proud of him. And so, hey, but before we dive into the interview, I got two things to tell you really quick. So if you know about Flavor Fest, it's an urban leadership conference, a music festival that we do in Tampa, Florida at Crossover Church. And the bad news, if you haven't heard it, is the 2020 conference is canceled. It was gonna be in October, but because of Auntie Rona, we were trying to hold out and wait to see if things would get better, but we had to postpone it. And so it's going to be going down in October of 2021. But hold on, before you cry and shed some tears like I did a little bit, we are doing something for you guys, for leaders and church planners and entrepreneurs and artists that are watching. We know that more now than ever, you guys need resources. You need ideas, you need inspiration, innovation, and so we want to give you those tools. So on Saturday, October the 24th, we're actually going to do a free virtual conference for you guys. It's going to be absolutely free, and we're going to be pouring into you guys and giving you guys tools. So if you go over to flavorfest.org, it's going to have all the details where you can register for free with your team, with your friends, with your fam. And listen, like, you don't have to get on a plane, you don't have to pay for gas to get here, there's no registration fee, there's no hotels and food. We're taking all those barriers away so you guys can be part of Flavor Fest in 2020 for the one-day virtual conference. So flavorfest.org, go over there, sign up and register. The second thing is, if you're watching this and you're a pastor or a church planner or even just a leader at your church, this has been a tough season for churches. Support your church, for real, for real. It's been tough. But at our church down here in Tampa at Crossover Church, we've been doing incredible during this season. And so I just filmed this course. It's called How Your Church Can Thrive in the Pandemic. And I share some of the stuff that we've been learning and how literally our church is in like the healthiest place it's ever been in several different categories. And we're blown by that ourselves. But we share some of the stuff that we've been learning and some of the ideas and innovation that we've had as a church. If you go over to my Instagram, you can get information on how to get the course. It's UrbanD813. It rhymes. Zauntee used to be from the 813. We still love him, even though he moved to Nashville. So go to UrbanD813. You can look in the Linktree link on there, and you'll see some information for the How Your Church Can Thrive in the Pandemic course. So you want to check that out. There's some great bonuses and stuff that we throw in there as well. So we're going to get into the podcast today with my man Zauntee, but I want to remind you guys, maybe you're new to the podcast, like if you could subscribe to it on YouTube, if you're listening to it on a audio podcast platform, like it, share it, rate it, all that stuff helps us to be able to reach even more leaders and empower them. So we're going to get right to it. Check out my man Zauntee. Zauntee, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's good, bro? Appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, man, it's good to connect with you. You're not in Tampa anymore, but, we get to connect like this over Zoom. So I remember the first time I met you was at Flavor Fest 2016. And
yes, sir.
You came, you was this young buck. You were still in high school, right?
Yeah, man, that was senior year, but I think I was 17.
Yep. And so tell us, man, what was your first experience like at Flavor Fest that year? What like sticks out in your memory?
Yeah, man. Well, bro, I remember being super excited because I had never been to an event that educated artists and entrepreneurs who were trying to get into any space, especially something tailored to people who wanted to do ministry, be a Christian artist, be in hip hop, be in that world. Um, and my whole thing kind of growing up getting into this, and we'll talk about that a little later, but like I always wanted to educate myself as much as possible. And so for there to be a gathering that had like resources, conversations, panels, and then like turning up at these shows, it was like, you know, little kid goes to Disney for the first time type vibe. Like we were
Yeah,
hyped.
yeah.
Parents told me, hey, this is something that's in the area. I was about it from day one. And when we got there, it was like kid in a candy store, like, oh wow, everything here is something that I'm excited about, passionate about. Even having conversations with like-minded people was so refreshing because usually when you're an artist or you're somebody who's trying to pursue a vision, a lot of times you're a lone wolf in a sense. And so even being around all those people who were like-minded, getting to have conversations with leadership and people who've had experience in that world, it was like a breath of fresh air, but it also kind of like lit a fire a little bit more where I was feeling like, oh shoot, this is possible. These are other
Hmm.
people who are doing it, and here are people who it's worked for. Maybe if I put all of my, focus on this, it's something that'll actually work. So it was also inspirational as well as like refreshing because it was like, dude,
Yeah, man, I
this is
remember, bro. You were running around the lobby, man. You had that look in your eye, like that kid in the candy store look like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And you had this bright blonde hair at the time. And you were extra young too. You were like 17, so you were younger than a lot of the other people that were there at the conference during the day. And that's what stood out to me as well because during the day, it's adults that are there that are ministry people, a lot of people in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and they're involved in urban ministry or they're already an artist. And so you don't see a lot of teenagers there during the day. They come at night for the concerts, but you were there during the day. Like you were in
yeah,
the
man.
workshops, you were chopping it up with people, you were building, and you definitely had that hunger in your eyes. Like, man, this is amazing. I want to do this. And I remember, man, I got a CD from you, and you weren't even called Zauntee at the time.
I hope I didn't listen to it to be honest.
I did, man. I remember it, bro. It stuck out to me. And what I will say about it though is you were definitely very confident in knowing like this is what I'm called to do. I'm
Yeah,
called to reach my generation. And it stuck out to me. I was like, wow, this kid is serious. Cuz you
I
don't run
appreciate
into that many like 16, 17-year-olds that are like super focused. You guys at that age, so many teenagers have so many other things pulling them left and right, and you were like on fire for God and trying to reach your generation. And so tell us, like, how did you get to that point? I know your family, I've met them, amazing people, but what was it like growing up in your house and growing up in the Tampa area?
Yeah, man. One, I appreciate the encouragement that you picked up on all of that at Flavor Fest, bro, and I'm just grateful that that was, what you remember from it. Growing up in Tampa, man, I was born in like near Denver, Colorado area. When I was 2, we moved to my grandparents' basement, kind of outside of Detroit area. Then we moved to Tampa when I was 4. We got here because my parents were they were part of a church plant. Some God had put on their heart, and I'm so inspired by them. They've been this incredible example for me because they're willing to make the sacrifice of, okay, there's no financial promise in this, but it's a ministry we're called to. That example, even though there was a lot of times that we went through that weren't easy, there was a struggle and there was overcoming that. I was inspired because it was always that, look, God will provide. Right now it's more important that we're living and helping other people. um, and they always took care of me. I didn't even know that we were going through hard times just because
Yeah.
I was so happy as a kid, like feeling loved, which I'm so grateful for. I don't take that for granted at all. But it's one of those things is as I got older, I realized like, okay, there's a real element of fulfillment that comes with doing things for other people and living life with that in mind. How can I reach a generation that I feel like sometimes we miss? And that's when I started to
Mm.
really learn about and lean into, and we can go into this more when we talk about the music side, how that got started. But growing up in Tampa, when I got around high school, I had been totally all about Jesus. I had been a Christian, My parents had raised me right. And I started to get this pressure in high school of everybody else, where they were all at. And this was before we met up. Kind of like by the time I went to Flavor Fest was right when I started to, right in that fall season was when I was like, okay, I'm locked in now. But before that, it was all about how do I gain respect and a reputation? And so I started running with the people
Mm-hmm.
who were feared, respected, had the reputation. And I figured out what do I got to do to get in with these people. Basketball wasn't in that for me, rapping, things like that. And I was running with these guys, and I thank God he protected me from doing anything real stupid that could have messed me up for my future. But it was one of those things where that was my whole life was around this false sense of fulfillment in an identity that I was creating.
Yeah.
I had this moment where my mom was like, when she found out how I'd been living over the few years, like she basically was like, look, she was real serious. She didn't even get upset. She was like, look, in 10 years, you won't know these people and you'll have Jesus to lean on if you need him, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
have that answer and you're watching them drown.
Yeah.
And that just, I was like, whoa, there's a responsibility here, whether it's comfortable or not, for me to represent Christ. And authenticity is culture currency. So I started to represent Christ in that circle. People connected with it. I didn't even realize, but these dudes who nobody was trying to give hope or encouragement to were actually looking for it. I got to be a voice in their lives. I still have people who hit me up now who talk about changes that have been made in their life because of salvation. And
That's
God opened
good,
that
bro.
door. And that's when I was like, what if I could get this into music? What if I could use my favorite, my passion of making songs and take everything that, like you said, growing up in Tampa, everything that kind of happened over high school and use that to scale as it came into, graduating, becoming an adult and doing it full time.
That's awesome, bro. And let me tell you, some of those guys that you poured into at that point, they're gonna remember that. And it's funny because just the other day, a friend of mine called me that I spoke to him a couple of months ago, but before that, it had been years. Guy that I was hanging out with when I was about your age. I was about 18, 19, 20. I know you just turned. Did you turn 21 now?
Yes, sir. May 20.
Man, you growing up, man. You growing up. But he called me and he was like, "Man, I remember back in the day, like back when I was around that age." And he's like, just being able to watch you and you poured into us, and I got to minister to him and pray with him on the phone the other day. And so, yeah, man, those seeds you're planting, even at that young age, man. Even if you don't see them come to fruition now, it might be 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road when they'll be coming back to look for, man, I remember Zauntee, man. He was a real one. Like
Yep.
and look at where he's at now, man. I gotta talk to him, man. I need some advice from him. I need some prayer, and like
Mm.
you're gonna see that happen, man. And so, but yeah, I've got to hang out a couple of times with you and your dad, and your dad is a really cool guy, man. Still regularly
Awesome.
text me and keeps in touch with me. And I'll say this, man, you're blessed to have the family support that you have. And like
100%.
I know even for me, like I had good family support. My mom and dad are no longer with me anymore. They passed back in 2017. But as I was coming up, bro, they were like pillars for me. They helped shape my faith, my life in so many different ways. And so, you're blessed, man, that you have a great mom and dad that support your ministry. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that of how much they do in a minute. But I remember in particular, like, your pops called me and was like, hey, um, there's a bunch of different labels looking at Z, and we're trying to navigate that and figure it out. Would love to pick your brain on it. And I remember we went to lunch that one time. And so you guys, you had God Taught Me came out and blew up on Rapzilla. And that video, like, it just like went crazy, man. It went viral. And so then suddenly you had all these labels that were like, yo, who
Oh
is
yeah.
this young kid?
Remember that.
Yeah, like cats were calling you, bro. Like you probably heard this before, but they were like, "Yo, he's like the Justin Bieber of CHH." Like
Yeah.
we gotta sign him, right? So man, like as you were navigating that, how did you guys land with the label that you're with, and talk a little bit about that? Because I knew about it like before it happened. You were like, "Don't tell anyone; it's a secret." And then eventually it took a while for you guys to finally be able to reveal, who you guys were with, but what was that process like, and what was going through your head? You went from like nobody knowing you hardly, right, to now suddenly like everybody's like, "Yo, who is this kid?" And like you're hanging out with Lecrae and all these different artists that you looked up to, and you're meeting them now, and these people are talking to you and having conversations about, hey.
Yeah, bro. It was, bro. Let me tell you. Uh, it's funny. I mean, there's some people who spend decades on, their craft before they get their break, and so I am super grateful for the timeline that it was on. I trust God's timing. He knew what we'd have to go through. Um, it was one of those things where, for like, I had been writing songs since I was 10, and then producing since I
Wow.
was 14. I kind of made the decision. I was really into basketball, like I said, and I'll let other people kind of testify more on my skills, but I will say I was nice, and I still am. So anybody got you. But
Watch out.
basically, I was really invested in all that. I decided, you know what? I'll keep playing basketball because I love it, but I'm not going to spend time on any high school sports. As soon as I'm done with whatever schoolwork for that day, right? I'm just going to go into my room, lock in, and just work on music. And that's what I did the
Wow.
entire our high school years, except for when I got when I would go hoop, or when I got older, I started working. And so what my schedule ended up looking like before this explosion and before the label calls was 2016, 2017, from 9 a.m. till midnight. I'm out in South Tampa, like delivering groceries, right? And then from 1 a.m. till 4 a.m., I'm at home making beats and writing songs. And then on the weekend, I'm spending all my free time watching performance videos, all these concerts, all these guys rocking out at festivals, performing my tracks in front of a mirror, putting on a beat and
Wow.
freestyle, trying to get better because I realized that, one, from a standpoint of, finances, I wanted to be able to invest back into people who had supported our family. My mom and dad have sacrificed so much. I mean, I've been writing songs about that, especially for this new album, just kind of telling more of my story. But it's like, you know, they believed in me enough, even in music, where, they supported that, even though it's not like a short term reward that takes longer. And so I was like, I'm just going to grind as much as I can, drive 3 hours to do concerts in front of less than 20 people,
Hmm.
and opener. And like, that was my life for 2 years. And God taught me, was I rushed to make it, for a New Year's show that I had out in Orlando, a place that was called 3-in-1 Cafe.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and I was doing a New Year's show there. And this was right after like Flavor Fest. So I had just gotten like this inspiration of like, yo, I want to be an artist. I had learned a lot about branding, a lot about growth, and that's when I changed my name to Zauntee, something more concise, something more unique. Had really prayed into all that, right? So I was like, okay, I got this New Year's show coming up. Let me make a song that I can perform as my closing song, and it'll be my first single as Zauntee.
Hmm.
Weeks, bro, couldn't do anything. Then I had this moment where I just said, God, I surrender. I give it to you. And I tell this story because I want to make sure he gets the credit.
Yeah.
Um, I went to sleep at 3:40 a.m. I woke up with the melody. The next day, the entire thing, mix and everything. I did it on the equipment you see behind me, was done in an hour and a half, whole song, like as you hear it.
Wow.
And uh, nobody knew about it until that video. We shot that video on a borrowed camera with my brother, and the two other guys who were in it were strangers we had met at a mall. And we said, hey, want to be in a video with us? And I had invited like 30 people, and nobody was available that day. Now I can invite 30 people and they'll be like, when and where, but it's
Yep.
like we didn't have
There'll be 130. Like, cause they're gonna tell some friends,
exactly.
can they come too? Yeah.
Yeah, for real. We didn't have any clouders like, oh yeah, another SoundCloud rapper, of course. So we just shot it, and I saved up work, like I was stashing like, okay, money to put on promotion and try and get the video out there.
Hmm.
It popped and it went crazy. And I mean, I never knew it would be something like this too, where we've turned it into a brand. We keep putting out merch items that have that written on there. People keep buying it.
Yep.
We did a 2019 video to kind of show fans what we were up to during 2019 for tours. Is probably one of my favorite things we put out, just because it shows the kind of the front lines ministry we've been up to. My boy Malachi put that together. He's a goat. But yeah, we dropped it, and I was like, okay, the goal is 25,000 views. I have it written down on paper. We were like, Lord, please let this reach 25,000 people. That was our goal. And that's what it hit first week. And the rest is like history, I guess.
Yep.
So we were like, okay,
What is it up to now? I haven't like looked at the numbers lately.
7.5 million, I believe,
Wow.
which is crazy because, again, that was totally like, I just made that in my room, and it was borrowed camera. I tell people that's a God
Yeah.
moment. That's not, oh, I don't take credit. I glorify him with that. But I mean, there was work that went into it, but it's being diligent with the gifts he's
Yep.
given. And it was one of those things I was super conscious about. Okay, what can I do that's going to stand out? Bleach the hair, you know, rocking stuff that would be more along the lines of something like Uzi at the time, or different things that were like just
Mm-hmm.
nobody was doing in Christian music realm, because I was like, one, that motivation of I got to get noticed, I have to build something, and two, just the calling for ministry that I had felt since you met me. And so after that, I was like, okay, I've been working on a mixtape, and we're like, we got to put out a mixtape to show that we're not just a one trick pony. We can get more songs out there. And literally the week of the mixtape, I put it out, and I had already gotten hit up by some CHH guys and gone and met up with them at concerts and hung out with them because they had seen God Taught Me. My boy Dayton had hit me up, as soon as it dropped, like, yo, this is gonna be dope. Before it had numbers, that's why I got so much respect
Mm-hmm.
for him. I got this before.
Yeah,
I
he's in
saw y'all,
Tampa now. Yeah.
bro. Tampa, man. I wish I was still living there, bro. We'd be hanging out all the time. But
Yeah.
shout out. But basically, then when we dropped the mixtape, that's when we started getting the calls, because it was like, oh shoot, this kid has more music. One of the songs, like My Time Now, started to climb to like 500,000 streams, and like, we started to do numbers that were like consistent.
Mm-hmm.
We got calls, and then we went through that whole process. Um, it was like, honestly, I was doing laps around the house. I was so hyped because we were email like such and such records. Can we set up a time to call so and so A&R? And that was like, I never knew that it was gonna happen as soon as we dropped. And that was something
Yeah.
for me where I had set up a list of goals. Before I graduated, I read my family this list of goals that I said I'm gonna do,
Mm-hmm.
and it was I want to get signed before my 19th birthday, because I was turning 18. I want to get signed before my 19th birthday. I want to perform at Flavor Fest. I want to perform at Winter Jam, and I want to have a song that goes over 1 million streams. And those were like my main goals, where I was thinking about them every day.
Wow.
And so it was also wild for me. Flavor Fest is one of the places, if not the place, where it kind of all started for me, the vision. And so getting to come back, and not only come back, but be like able to close out the show, and with like 1K, and just be in that moment, was like one of the big goals I'd been thinking about for a couple years. And then getting to do Winter Jam this year was like kind of that last check mark, because I got signed 3 days before my 19th birthday, and
Wow.
God taught
You hit all those goals, bro. So let me stop you for a second, and just, so I know a lot of artists listen to the podcast and watch this, because there's so many artists connected to Flavor Fest. And every time we do the conference, there's a couple hundred artists that come. So I want to point out to those artists, like, listen, you might need to go back and rewind some of the stuff that Zauntee said, because a lot of you will be like, oh man, I want to have my breakthrough song. But did you hear when he said every night when he got home from school, I mean, he was still in high school at the time, he would go in his room and he'd work on his craft diligently, consistently working on it. And then on the weekends, when he got a job, on the weekends, he would watch videos and watch performances and take notes. And he was just constantly studying and observing the culture, being wise. Not that we want to copy everything, but the reality is we also have to be wise. And so what I've watched you do, man, you talked about branding and marketing and all that stuff. And, even before we started the podcast, you were like, yeah, man, I love all the branding Flavor Fest and Crossover does. You guys are super clean. But that's stuff that, like, you noticed, and you've been able to create a movement, and you've created this whole thing, like the Zealots. And, where's my Zealots at? The hashtag. And you got all these people, they feel like they're part of this movement. They're Zealots, and the whole God Taught Me thing. And I mean, just that simple font that's right there on your hoodie, you've sold thousands and thousands of those hoodies. I got a couple. My kids have bought several of those hoodies from your website. The purple one, they love them. They wear them to school all the time, right? Yeah. So you've done such a great job of being a student, and a lot of artists don't always do that. They think it's just going to blow up overnight. And although you did have a song that, blew up and went viral, there was a story behind that of all this work that you have been putting in for years. Some of these artists, suddenly they're like, I want to become a rapper, and they think they're going to have a viral breakthrough like next week, but you put in all those years of working on your craft. Even though you were young, you said you started writing at 10, started producing at 14. And so artists that are out there, like, man, work on your craft, be diligent, be disciplined, study, talk to other people, get around as many people as you can to ask questions and just lean in and listen. And so I just want to give you props, Zauntee, because God's brought you to where you are. Not only because first and foremost, you're faithful and you love the Lord and you have a calling on your life, but then also you've had this other side where you've been disciplined and you've worked on your stuff, and man, and God's blessed it.
Thank you so much for that encouragement, man. And can I tag team off of that real quick before the next
jump in, bro.
I feel like it's important for every single artist to think about this, right? You have to realize one of the things that I thought about a lot before I had anybody know any of my music. I mean, I had put out stuff under different names and had stuff that literally never crossed 1,000 plays over a year and a half. So God Taught Me wasn't my first release. It was my first song, Zauntee, but it was all the 3 years of, consistently fine tuning. What you have to realize is you have to understand what is your gift and why do you have that gift? Because God will open up your eyes to the fact that you have a unique message or a unique thing that you bring to the table. Don't try and improve all of the stuff that might not be your strong point. Zero in on what he's given you, because God will bring you eventually, bring you the team where you can have everybody else helping you. I mean, in the beginning as a, indie artist, we were building our own website and designing the merch and shooting the videos and making all the social media content and syndicating it across all platforms and doing that every day. That was what I was all about all the time. I was producing and mixing and everything. But I realized what my skill set was and what my focus was. If you don't build a community and if you don't give something of value, you're never going to have that moment of a song. Because God Taught Me could have been a song that a lot of people liked, but we could have retained none of that. I know plenty of artists in Christian and mainstream music who have a hit, but nobody sticks around after that.
Yeah.
And the reason we still have, thousands of followers, but also a community in people who will drive 4 hours to come to a show, why we've been able to be a hard ticket artist and do headlining shows and go and be out on Winter Jam and have these long lines and have these Zealots waiting for us in different cities and be able to go live with Zealots and FaceTime Zealots. And like all of that was out of my heart to say, you know what, I want to create I want to create a location where somebody who's hurting, who's broken, who needs somewhere to belong, they can feel safe and a part of something. I think that the work is always going to win. You could have all the talent in the world, but there's plenty of dudes who have all the talent and who don't get it done. Michael Jordan was the third pick, bro. He was not number one when he got. It's all about how much work are you going to put in. God honors hard work. A lot of times we either go one of two ways. We either work, and we try to do it in our own strength and we nix God out of it, or we try to play God as Santa Claus and we say, if we're a good boy and girl, he'll give us our wish list. The reality is right in the middle. You honor God with your talents and your abilities by working as hard as you can. And the Bible says, right, that he rewarded the ones who were diligent with the gifts that he gave them. That's why I keep saying hard work, God first, because one thing I've always seen, every artist who's got a vision or anybody who's got a vision, set your goals clearly. And then every single day, once you've prayed into them and have peace and say, that's what God wants me to do, every single day, meditate on them. I'm going to flip the camera and I'm going to show you this real quick. Hold up.
All right.
Let me show you this real quick. You might be able to. These, bro. I've got my, do you see it?
Yep.
I got it right here. I've got, oh, hold on. Somebody just called me. I had it on Do Not Disturb. That was weird. I've got my goals sitting in front of me every single day, all the time. I'm looking at those. I'm thinking about, what am I doing to move forward on that? Because I promise you, if God is on your side, nothing's impossible. I literally rattled off the 4 goals that I was thinking about all the time. I've done them. And I just turned 21. Imagine if you set your goals and that's all you think about, and then you move forward step by step, day by day. I mean, Pastor Tommy, you've been in this game for years, and there are so many things that you've done as an individual and then with your church body that so many pastors say, oh, well, I would like to do that someday, but they never execute on. They never make that step to reach out. They never make that step to build something. Love Our City has become this movement that's setting Tampa on fire, not because you said it in a brainstorm session and then never did anything about it. You said, okay, I honor God and I trust him, but I'm also going to put in the time and the work.
Yep.
And I think everybody needs to realize that nothing is impossible, and you have to actually believe that. There's a lot of artists who never get past that mediocre stage of, you know, making music where it's basically a glorified hobby. And a
Hmm.
lot of the reason is because it is a glorified hobby and how they live their life with their habits. I had a job where I was working, like I said, 9 to midnight. And so I just sacrificed sleep. And then on the weekends, I didn't go, for a year, I didn't go hoop. I didn't go work out. I didn't go, play or goof around or go to the mall. I made a decision that I'm going to give a year to this. And then if it doesn't work, maybe I'll change paths. But if you put in the time, as you know just as well, I'm preaching to the choir, it
Come on,
will
man.
work. Just about, is that God's will, and are you going to put in the time?
Come on, man. That's good, bro. You preaching,
That was,
man.
I know, bro. That was a little mini sermonette
That's
for
all
you, but
good,
it was
man. Words of
one.
wisdom from Zauntee, 21 years old. Look at that, man.
Oh well, I
You
mean, we're on
seasoned, bro. You seasoned already.
the
That's your
listen, man, in life. But like one of the things I've learned is like, even and people may look at where we're at, right? And okay, you did God Taught Me, and then you released a couple of songs since you've been signed. People don't. I mean, again, I have no problem with what people see right now, because the reality is, 2 years you didn't see what I was doing that led to God Taught Me.
hmm
And in the same way, I would rather put out the right thing than the wrong thing quickly. And we have this album that we've been working on for the last 2 years with these songs that are the best music I've ever been a part of. And that's going to happen this summer and this fall. And I would much rather pick the timing of, especially in regards to what some of these are about and what the things we're facing as a nation and
Yeah.
as a planet. I know God's timing is perfect. And also, you have to realize, pace yourself and don't be discouraged. We
hmm
got my track, bro, and she got trained by an Olympic gold medalist, where he came and did some coaching sessions. And he said something that stuck with me, bro. He said, "You want to know the quickest way to lose a race? Look beside you, or look behind you." He said, "If you look next to you or you look behind you, you're gonna lose. There's no way around it." And
Wow.
it's the same in life. You look at the finish line and you sprint towards it. If you look beside you to see what your competition or your, you know, coworkers or counterparts or whoever, and you're comparing yourself, or you keep looking at your past and what's
hmm
worked in the past or your trauma or your history, you're never going to get to the finish line. You also got to start running. When that gunshot sounds and it's time to run, you can't just overanalyze. Sometimes it's better to go and slip and scrape your knee, but keep running.
Yeah, man. That's good, bro. So Flavor
Yeah,
Fest 2016, when I first met you, then you came back. We talked about that. Flavor Fest 2018. So you were
yeah.
just an attendee. 2 years later, you were on the main stage doing
I
like
know.
one of the main sets, like right, like you said, with 1K Few. And not only that, but you had a crowd of zealots that came out that night as well. So I mean, like during your set on that Friday night was probably one of the times that the room was the most full. And for those that haven't been to Flavor Fest, like it's really a festival. There's multiple things happening in the building. There's another stage in the gym. There's in the lobby. There's a DJ. There's all kinds of exhibitors. There's food. Then we have like a coffee bar and graffiti thing, like in another space in the back of the building. So people kind of move around throughout the entire night. So the auditorium where the main stage is not always like there's always a lot of people in there, but it's not always like super packed in the whole room. But yeah, like man, people were in there for your set. They were rocking with you. And of course, when you did God Taught Me, I mean the place was going crazy. So,
Yeah,
but then you talked about Winter Jam. So Winter
yo,
Jam is the biggest Christian tour out there, and even sales wise, many years it's been one of the biggest grossing music tours in the world on the planet. And so you had an opportunity to be part of that this past year, which was amazing. I was following you, on Instagram and a lot of stuff you were doing. But then like towards the middle of it, or maybe it was towards the tail end of it, man, suddenly there was this not interruption, but disruption, and
yeah.
COVID dropped. And
Oh,
so, man, talk a little bit about Winter Jam, and then what did that transition look like when suddenly it was like, I know you were saying like we were told like one show was canceled and then two, and then before you knew it was like, yeah, the tour's
every
over.
plus the 20 shows that were scheduled when Winter Jam was going to be done, and all the summer festivals that we had booked.
Yeah.
It was it was a lot. It was like I mean, you know, I it was something that was difficult when that happened, but I also realized it's not just us, it's everybody. So
Everybody.
I think part of
Churches,
that too,
bro. We still are not back at physical church yet. We're
telling you,
still
man, it's like one
online.
of those where everybody shifted. Like you said, it was more than an interruption. It was more than, my bus broke down, so I can't go to the next show. It was like the
Yeah.
world stopped, so that was a little bit of a different situation I can get to. But the tour, when I found out I was going to be on it, I kind of broke down in tears because that was something that, I mean, that felt even more like, I don't know, it just one of those things. Like when it comes to okay, getting signed or getting streams, those are things where you feel like you could put in that work and get it done. When it comes to things like being booked for a show like Flavor Fest or to the level of like Winter Jam, that's not something that you can just, you could grind like crazy and still never have that right connection to get into that place.
Yeah.
And when I found out that that was something that my team had worked out, I was like in shock almost of, whoa, this is real.
It's
I haven't
major,
even
bro. I was so happy for you, man. I was texting you like,
uh,
yo, this is
I remember you
incredible.
hit me up right away. You were one of the first people to hit me up, which by the way, that meant a lot to me. You were one of the first people who hit me up within 5 minutes of like the announcement. And that blessed me so much, bro. By the way, thank you for that.
No doubt.
But the reality is like, I mean, for me, it was like kind of this moment of, anything literally, because I've believed it, but sometimes you go through doubts, especially if you're,
Mm-hmm.
platform where you're having to deal with different ups and downs in life. Everybody does. But it was kind of like one of those moments where I was like, whoa, this was like the what I consider to be the most difficult goal on my list. And it's done. It's a done deal. It's happening. And when we started it, man, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, bro. I believe that, there's always a breakdown right before a breakthrough, whether it's small or whether it's a big thing. We got punched in the face when Winter Jam started.
Mm.
We were super prepared. It ended up being this thing where, the merch setup that we had to, get it ourselves, just because of some miscommunications, and we almost didn't get that in time. Then me and Pops both got really, 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 really sick. What's scary about it is the doctors didn't know what it was, and now I'm almost wondering if it was related to some of the stuff that's going on. It was flu symptoms. It was, they said that's what they thought it was, but it was like couldn't get out of bed, you know, barely breathe, super dizzy. I lost my voice. So I'm starting this dream tour, one of which the stops is Tampa, and I barely have a voice. I sound like I just smoked 10 packs of cigarettes and
Wow.
got punched in the throat by a horse or kicked in the throat. I don't have hands, but that's what I sounded like. And so it was like, I'm over here like, bro, Bruce Springsteen, like after a fight with Rocky Balboa. That was my voice. And I'm sorry, I could keep describing it, but regardless. So I'm over here
That's
like,
great.
and on a serious note, like it was, having like difficulties with the vehicle because in the beginning we didn't have any space for our merch on any of the trailers or any of the uh, semis, so we had to bring it ourselves in the van, and we had van issues where cracked tail light because I backed up into a mailbox.
Wow.
That's
See,
my
these
fault.
are all the stories that nobody knows. They just see the glory on IG and they're like, look at it in front of thousands of people. And then behind the scenes, like
Bro, it
taillights
gets
breaking, police pulling you over, crazy stuff.
we had the engine having issues, and then we had issues where merch production was pushed back. Like I said, the merch setup. And again, on a serious note, I actually had a really close friend of mine who I wasn't even in Tampa at the time, but he passed away uh,
Mm.
like 2 days before the first show. And this was somebody that I had been playing basketball with all summer when I was hooping. Um, and the last conversation I had with him on the phone, uh, the last thing I remember this, bro, and I've been talking to his family and stuff since. The last thing he said to me was like, "Oh, we're brothers, man." He said, "Someday I'm gonna be in the league. You're gonna be, filling arenas. I can't wait to see you when you're in Tampa."
Mm.
And he passed away, and that was literally 2 days before we left. And so, you know, lightweight stuff like having to figure out the merch, having to figure out the vehicle, and all of that was its own challenge. Getting really sick, having no voice for this tour that I've been waiting for, losing someone who was close to me, getting to this place and it being a whole new world. Cause I'd been on 2 arena tours, but that was as more of a crew guy. People don't realize that, but I was working crew spots all day. And shout out to Casting Crowns for allowing me into that position. And then I had my set. But even then, it was like I didn't have merch set up. I didn't have meet
Hmm.
and greet. I didn't have the responsibility of a team. I didn't have to. I wasn't technically an artist on the bill in that sense. Um, and so this was also I was my own road manager in a sense because we had to be very streamlined because of the expenses. And it was like just the first week was this brutal. Like you said, people don't realize. That's why I've learned never to compare myself or envy other people's blessings because you don't realize the stuff that they go through to get into that point or what
Yeah.
goes on when they're there. But it was one of those things where I kept telling people, and you might have seen me kind of videoed, um, what was going down in each day. And I kept saying, like, when you have those moments, the best players get the most defense. If you are getting defense in life, it means that you're a threat to the enemy and you're a threat to your competition or people who don't want to see you win. And take that as encouragement. And so I kept telling myself that. Eventually, my voice came back. Um, you know, Eventually, we figured everything out and we started killing it in merch. We started having
Hmm.
these. I mean, day one, we had these super long lines with fans waiting. Which the only reason I say that is to encourage any artist who's at day one. I was talking to my followers like I had people who I knew making fun of me because I was like, we're the Zealots, and I had 3 likes and 1 comment. So it's like to actually see that come to fruition again,
Yeah.
all glory to God. But you have to manifest. This is going to sound real guru like, but you have to manifest what you want. When you don't have followers, talk to the 3 followers who support you, like be grateful for them being there, build that movement when there's no one around, perform in front of 5 people like it's 5,000 people
Yep.
or 5 million people. Like always give your best. And then what that will do is it'll create people who want to support you. And I'll have people drive 4 to 8 hours and stay late and bring gifts and have custom t-shirts that they've made or signs or stuff like that. Those moments come by being faithful with a little, so you can be faithful with a lot. And so yeah, the Winter Jam, once everything was right again, it was a movie. It was like everything I hoped it would be. Felt like Rocky, felt like Creed type thing. Like we're waking up, we're getting off the bus, and we're setting up our merch, and it's snowing out. And we get inside, and we got the music going. We're building the merch table and getting the catering, and working out and going to sound check. Like it was like everything I had hoped to have on the tour.
Yeah.
Um, and then one day it was just done. I
Yeah.
mean,
So what
that's the
was
whole.
that like, man? I mean, we hear all the amazing stuff. I mean, yeah, the hard stuff, but then there was the amazing moments, and your fan base is built even so much bigger because so many more people got exposed to you. But then talk about what happened in March 2020.
Yeah, who knew, bro? Nobody could have predicted like how extreme everything. I knew it was serious. I think I said this a little earlier, but I knew it was serious when I got out of my bunk and I walked into the front of the bus and everybody had just kind of woken up and Sports Center was on and they were announcing that the NBA was canceled.
Yep. You knew it was going down then.
Because it was
I
like
was on a Wednesday night. I remember I was at church that night and people were talking about the virus, but like our attendance that night was great. People were there, nobody was scared. Everybody still hugging, shaking hands, but this thing was like building, right?
ex-
But then when that dropped with the NBA and then there was this other stuff, like and that Sunday, like that was the last Sunday we had church. And even then we were like, should we have church? Should we not? Like we were on the fence that Sunday of even to have church. We decided to do it and our attendance was off maybe a little bit, about 15, 20%. Wasn't crazy. But that night, that's when
yeah,
President Trump or the CDC was like, no gatherings of 50 or more for the next 8 weeks. We're like, well, we have a pretty big church. We're like, I guess we can't have church for 2 months. What? And then the next day, the president was like, no gatherings of 10 or more. We're like, oh, snap. We can't even do anything. Like, and it was just like, whoa.
definitely. It wasn't even like it's going to be from now till now. It was just like, well, just sit around and wait
Yep,
kind of thing.
to be determined. And then there was all the rumors with COVID, right? I was getting people texting me like, "Yo, they're gonna put martial law into place," and I had people from Cali calling me because they were already a couple weeks ahead of us on the lockdown. They're like, "Yo, man, there's Humvees in the street, there's soldiers marching," and I'm like, "Oh snap!" I'm getting these text messages from people. like, you better record a bunch of stuff for your church services coming up because they're going to make sure no one leaves their homes, and then there's rumors of like millions of people are going to die. Then there's other people saying it's fake, it's a hoax.
Yeah.
Then there's the videos of like, it's because of 5G.
Yeah.
There's so many conspiracy theories out there. It was like our heads were about to explode.
For real. No, it was one of those things. I remember when it was starting to be talked about. It's weird because there's I can get into that later, but this 2020 feels like we're living a chapter in a history book, which I mean, technically we always are, but this feels like this is going to be a hefty unit. I keep seeing memes and jokes about it. Kids in 2040 are going to regret when the chapter gets to 2020 when they got a test to take.
I'm telling you, man, the memes have been amazing though. The memes have kept us going. You got to have a sense of humor through some of this, man.
Bro, but it was like, we were talking about it on the bus because when we would get done, we get done with the show and then break everything down and get done with all the meet and greets. By the time we were cleaned up and packed up, we're getting on the bus around like 1 or 2 a.m. every night. And we would just kind of sit there for like 30 minutes, just kind of recap, talk, hang out a little bit, listen to music, sometimes throw on a movie, chill, wind down. But we started to hear that this was a thing that was, because I think you remember, like, it was kind of talked about. It wasn't like this big deal yet.
Yeah,
but
it was in China. It was like this thing overseas, and they were on lockdown, and like that certainly can't come here.
We were talking about that literally. Is it going to come to the U.S.? And I was like, have you seen Outbreak? Like, I'm pretty sure it's going to travel. But we talked about it, and it was just like this, conversation topic. And I mean, nobody, and myself included, was like, oh yeah, this is going to stop the planet for 3 months. And when it hit, we were like, literally, we found out that the one show, how it was phrased to us is because the only church that's on Winter Jam was that venue. Everything else is stadiums, but this was a church that seats like 30,000 people, I think, something crazy. So it was the only church, and we got the messaging that the church didn't feel comfortable hosting Winter Jam because they didn't want to have to deal with liability. We were like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, they're not in arena, so they're not equipped to deal with it the same way as maybe a arena would. And then when we were about 20 minutes from Nashville, where all the buses drop off, we got the text in the group text, like, hey, the whole thing's done. And so it was kind of depressing in a sense of, and again, everybody had their moments. So I'm not trying to say like, this is harder than what everybody else did.
Yeah.
But one was unfortunate for us, and everybody else who was on tour with me was like, you didn't get to have any closure with any of the people you had been working with for the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had built so many relationships, and you're living together for 2 months, eating together, having church together, devotions and small groups and ministry and, goofing around and ping pong and exercising. And I mean, like, there was this one time where me and Andy set up, like, he had the idea. And so we went around, I think me and I forget a couple other guys, like, started gathering everybody, and we did, all the dudes just did like 100 push-ups in the locker room. Like, after the show, we were just like, yelling, hyping each other up. It was like Fight Club, right? We're like, go get 100, like, just ripping it up and stuff like that. You didn't get to say, hey, it was fun working with you to anybody.
Yeah.
The only people closure with were the people on your bus. And so, I mean, you try to text, you try to reach out, but there's hundreds of people on that tour, and some people you would kind of run into once or twice a day. That was one of the most difficult things for me because, like on the Crowns tours that I did, and on any, independent tour we've done, or anything like that, you always have that moment of, hey, it was great working with you. Let's get a picture. Let's pray.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to make sure we can be in touch. That last show is always special because everybody's really in that moment. It really stuck. Listen, man, I know this probably happened with everybody, but what it really showed me is be 100% present and be in the moment, because you never know what tomorrow holds. I think a lot of people were on autopilot in a sense. I know I was I was being present. I was hyped about the life I was living, but I just believed that just because it said the Winter Jam tour was going to follow through and finish, that it was.
Yeah.
One of the things, again, this is, something that happened was, I've had a dog, right? And that was my dude. Like, he would always come hang out with me when I was in the studio and stuff. I had him for 13 years. He passed away while I was on tour. And so that's the kind of thing where, again, something that, I was used to always, okay, he's going to be here to greet me when I get home. Okay, this is something that's consistent, right? The touring, that's something that's always going to be there. I'd gotten used to it. It was my livelihood, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, church, that's something you always do. going to studio sessions and meetings, like all of my constants, all of my stuff that was kind of holding everything
Yep.
together that I knew
It's
was
all
always going to
gone.
be gone.
Yeah.
And I know that happened with everybody. I mean, that was how we all felt, like, yo, what? And everything just froze. But it really, the first week, I kind of like, meandered around in a sense of, because I mean, they were kind of saying, oh, well, we might pick back up, or I mean, nobody knew what was going to
Yeah.
happen.
At first, we
I,
thought it was just a little interruption, maybe a few
yeah,
weeks, and then it's going to die down and we'll get back to normal sometime in,
exactly,
in April.
exactly,
Yeah.
bro. It's so sad that was everybody was thinking that, because that's not what happened.
Yeah, man. We look back on it. We still don't know. We still, like, we're in
Yeah,
June and,
sure,
and it's like still uncertain. It's spiking cases in
yeah.
a lot of different places. And so what did you guys do like over these last couple of months? Because a lot of us, we've all had to pivot. That's been a big word that we've been using in ministry, in church, artists. Like, it's all had to pivot and basically go online. So what's some of the stuff that you guys have been doing and what have you been learning? Because as you said, like all your shows, all the festivals this summer, everything has been canceled and postponed.
Yeah, like as far out as fall, like there was fall stuff that got, you know, taken off the calendar just because it's not from a promoter or booking agent or whoever puts together these events. It's too risky to try and pay
Yeah.
deposits on
There's too
or
many
try to sell.
unknowns still. Yeah.
Just could have to refund everything and cancel it all. Um, but yeah, man, what we did, I mean, like I said, the first week I kind of was like, I didn't really have structure. I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe we'll go back to it. I didn't even like unpack my suitcase all the way. Like I was just kind of like, okay, what's gonna happen? Once I realized this is how it's gonna be, um, I tried to implement as much structure as I can. Uh, regardless of I had a mentor tell me this the other day. Regardless of your personality, it's really important to implement structure into your life. You could be, you know, super scattered all over the place, super creative type. You could be super logical, super locked in. Um, but you got to get to the point where you're holding yourself in a pattern to get things done. So what I started kind of doing, bro, was getting up early, making sure I was working out, making sure I was getting in the studio, making sure I was having time in the Word, listening to positive things, you know, being real focused. I locked in and made a bunch of music. I was on conference calls and meetings with team members, game planning, talking vision. I mean, we were gonna drop music earlier in the year, and then with everything, we've just like the process has been delayed because we have to shoot videos, we have to get all the stuff.
Yeah.
I thank God that it was, because some of the music that we've written is right on time for what we're walking through, and it'll be more healing versus coming before and then you have to move on from it. So God's timing was perfect. I mean, to stay connected, I was doing live until I kind of went locked in on album mode. I was doing lives every day, and as you guessed it on one of them, but we would have different people who would
Yeah, that
come
was
and share.
Easter Sunday, right? You had me come on Easter.
Oh, I was like, I got to get my dude on for Easter Sunday. That's the legend. So
Cool.
I'm you could jump on for that. But we did that for like I think 3 weeks, maybe it was a month, and then I just felt led of the Lord to say, okay, let's pause on that and really zero in and make sure that this album is 100% of your attention. Zero into that music, like when you used to lock yourself in your room and work on the mixtape. I would forget to eat and sleep sometimes. That sounds dramatic, but for real, I would remember. Oh, did I eat today? Oh, okay. I got to eat. Like that's that Eric Thomas. So you got to succeed as bad as you want to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's where back into that mindset. I was watching like a lot of movies like Steve Jobs and the Batman series and anything that I could like kind of kickstart that focus of, the Rocky series and stuff of like, okay, how do I get into that place where instead of training in front of all the lights and the cameras, I'm going to go to Cali with Creed and I'm going to lock myself in this gritty little gym and I'm going to kill it. And that was kind of my shift, because otherwise I knew I would have just been doggy paddling and waiting for the world to get back to normal. And honestly, a lot of good came from that. I mean, my pops had this awesome idea of, okay, well, we've got all this merch that, we were going to sell on the tour, and we were doing great numbers where, that would have been a real blessing to keep going. But now
Mm-hmm.
we've got this paid for and we've got to sell, or it's dead inventory. Well, what if we do a sale for the Zealots? We put out a new thing. We did the mask, which a lot of people bought, which was a blessing. Thank you to everyone who did. And then we started FaceTiming, just thanking face to face every single person who got merch.
Wow.
We set it up through like, a calendar where people could come schedule, and from 3 to 7, 3 p.m. to 7, I was on the phone with Zealots for that whole 4 hour window. Just
Wow. That's bro, that's work, man. That's love, bro.
it was like they're the only reason I'm in this place, God and then the community who supports me. So it was like I want to thank them face to face. I want to ask them, how can I serve you as I make new music? What do you need in your life? What are you walking through? And it was basically, I mean, putting my ear to the culture of who's buying and listening to the music. It was encouraging for me too, because I got to see how, wow, there's so many different people with different ethnicities and backgrounds and stories and history and goals, and they're all finding different things from these songs. That also kickstarted me because it's like, yo, what I'm doing is worth it. I remember when nobody cared, and God's allowed me to reach people who are like-minded, who are, trying to get motivated, trying to be better, trying to walk through pain and, find the good in it, trying to have a real relationship with God. And I encourage anybody who's trying to build some kind of movement, whether it's through ministry, business, music, whatever, keep your ear to the people. Whoever is supporting you, be all about that. Make sure that you're listening to their needs and you're respecting the people who give you support. Because if you don't be faithful with a little, you'll never be able to be faithful with a lot. And so that was a challenge. We were like, yo, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of, conversations and having to give everybody, we want to give the same energy to each person who calls,
Yeah.
never make people feel, like I'm tired. So it was just, all right, let me, drink some energy drinks, get some music going, pray, boom, let's knock out these calls. Like, but that's the kind of stuff that wins in the long
Man,
term.
that,
And I'm
that
not,
that's amazing, bro. That is, man. I know your fans, like when you do stuff like that, people are gonna stick with you, man. They're gonna, like you said, you're creating a value exchange, not just like, hey, buy my stuff. Hey, I wanna know who you are. I wanna let you know that you're special. You matter to me, and that's huge, bro. So tell us real quick. We're gonna get ready to wrap up in a minute. I got two more things to ask you real quick,
yeah,
but number one is, so you've been working on this amazing album that's even getting like tweaked even more through the pandemic, right? So
yeah.
what's the plans as of right now? We're recording this towards the end of June. What's the plans on when it's coming out? Do you have a title for it yet, or what can you tell us?
So I feel like we're gonna be like Kanye style, where we'll think of a title right before we
All
upload
right,
it.
all right.
We don't have a title yet because we're kind of ranging between a couple. But I will
Yeah.
say, literally, like my team is in the office as we speak right here, where as soon as I get off, we're jumping back in of, we're working on these video treatments. We've been the last 5 days straight, just meetings, phone calls, conferences, location scouting, like brainstorming sessions, studio sessions. I literally today had a call with the producer and then call with management. And like, I mean, if you want to be an artist and you want to do it, you've got to be committed to it. It's got to be your oxygen. So that's what we've been doing. But literally next week, bro, starting Monday, um, we start shooting the videos and the imagery that's going to be for covers and promo and
Dope,
content and
dope.
music. The first single for the album, which is, in my opinion, probably, I'm humbled because again, it was a Holy Spirit moment. Like we started crying in the studio. I freestyled it, bro. We have it on a voice memo. We were supposed to be doing another song, and this we took a break, and I freestyled this over some piano and some guitar for the other
Woo!
with the other.
Can't wait to hear that, bro.
Broke down in tears. I'm gonna release the actual original voice memo after the song's been out for a while.
Hmm.
Not as a song, but just as like an Easter egg. But like I literally start crying because you feel the presence of the Lord so heavy. I've never had that happen in any other session. And in my opinion, it's probably the most important piece of music I've ever been a part of.
Wow.
And that single that's coming out in the summer, like literally within a few weeks. So be
What,
praying,
what's the
please.
what's the title of that? Do you have a title
If I
of that?
feel that I can't, I'm so sorry, bro.
That's
Don't
okay.
worry. I haven't told anyone yet. I will tell you. I'll look, bro. I'll hit you up as soon as I'm at license. You'll be the first to know. Just like you were the first to hit me up when Winter Jam uh, was a thing. So
No
I
doubt.
will tell you as I know. But one of the reasons why we're being secretive about it is because the title has a lot of the concept involved in it and is very raw, very emotional. I haven't put anything out that's in this realm. I'm really, really, really excited about it. And please be praying because literally, I think the 24th, so literally in like 5 6 days we start shooting that video, and it's me and my team. The label believes in the vision, and they cut the budget and said, here, get your Avengers together and go make this happen, which again
Woo!
doesn't. So I'm so grateful for my team at Fair Trade Services and proper management, them coming alongside me, helping make this happen, because they're basically like, look, you execute the vision that's in your heart. We believe in where this is going. Uh, I'm so grateful for that. That's crazy. But we're going to be doing that. Plus, all the visualizers for the album, a couple of the other music videos, like within a week. And then we're just going to edit like crazy the next week, get an Airbnb and just zone in, just make it happen. So we're looking at music coming out summer and then, end of summer, early fall, like Zauntee's debut album, which again, I'm ecstatic about. And, there's been a lot of editing and a lot of process to how can each of these songs, if they were by themselves, how can it actually mean something to you in a moment where many artists are just, okay, how can I make a song based on what everybody else is doing? I like my creative process to be inspired by what's relevant, but also I play the legacy game, and I encourage everybody to do this. Who's
Hmm.
going to be at your funeral and why?
Yeah.
Every sermon you preach, every time you have a conversation, it's not about what can I get out of it, it's how can I give to this. It's not, well, maybe this is going to be a hit and get me a lot of streams. It's how many people can I actually impact so that when I'm dead and gone, somebody can look back and say, yo, that track really meant something to me. It
Yeah.
helped me. That's what this is all about. And hopefully that album, when it drops, has enough songs on there that check that box of this is more than just a song. This is something that impacts somebody in their heart and in their life.
Absolutely, bro. I can't wait to hear it, man. We're definitely
Bro,
going
I'm
to
a
support
demo.
it.
I'm sending you stuff.
All right, man. I'll be ready for it, bro. So, last thing I want to ask you, man, is
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. I just want to say that because I've been watching you even over the past number of weeks. So, we had this first wave of COVID, and then, we had this almost like this second wave of all this racial injustice that we've seen. We had Ahmaud Arbery and then Breonna Taylor and then George Floyd. And, there's just been so many things that have been happening. And obviously there's been, people protesting and raising their voices and, but
Yeah.
then there was some violence that popped out of that. And it's been a crazy season. And so, but I've been watching you on social media and, you've been speaking up. And so I just want to say, thank you for that. Proud of you. And we need people of all generations and of all colors, to talk
Mm.
about it. And so, just what's been a little bit of your heart, man, with some of the stuff that you've been seeing going on.
Yeah, man. This is this is one of the most difficult times that our nation has gone through in a while. But what's crazy about it is it's nothing new. It's been around.
Yep.
This has been that it's not like, oh, all of a sudden there's racism. What's going on? I mean, the reality is that there has never been true solutions and true progress for some of these issues.
Yep.
Um, I would encourage people of who aren't people of color to get educated on some of the things that have been going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, many of my dearest friends and family are Black in America. They're African American. My girlfriend is Ghanaian, and so there's different perspectives from all of these different people of color in my life who are living these things day to day. And I had a conversation with my friend who he was even talking about a time his dad had rented him a Mustang for his birthday. And he was driving it on a road trip from Oklahoma to Nashville. And he was so excited because, his dad had been real thoughtful and said, hey, I want you to take this and drive it home. And he got stopped by a police officer because the cop, quote, didn't think he looked like he should be driving that car. And that's one of those things
Wow.
where, on a level where I will never be an African American man in this nation, I will never know exactly what it feels like to walk through these things. But it's my responsibility. It's not my fault, but it's my responsibility to dismantle a system that I benefit from.
Mm.
So the idea is,
That's good, bro.
like I wasn't there during slavery. I wasn't there during those times of segregation. But as a white man in America, whether I like it or not, whether I know it or not, I subconsciously benefit from these systems. And it's my job to use whatever white privilege I may have to dismantle it forever. And it's my job to unify with, people who I love and respect, even if I didn't have anyone in my life who I knew. It's still, as a human being, as a Christ follower, you have to stand up for these issues, against these issues. I mean, because it's justice, and justice is the heart of Christ. I saw a church sign posted, which like opened my eyes because it's interesting how many people are undercover racist, and it's kind of coming to the surface during these times. I
Yep.
saw a church sign that said, "We worship a man of color who was killed by law enforcement." And that's, I mean, you think about it, that's what Jesus was, and that's what that story is. And it's like,
Yeah.
dang, how are you going to have that as, I mean, the world will be the world. There's plenty of evil people, or there's plenty of uneducated or ignorant people who are dealing with racism in a different capacity. But when it comes to the church, and when it comes to people who claim following Jesus, no matter what your background, no matter what you look like, no matter what you've walked through, it's your job to educate yourself, to love others as you've been loved, and to be there in these times. Because the reality is, I mean, it's a lot easier to either, I mean, there's people who are opposed, there's also a lot of people who are silent. And,
Hmm.
you might have seen, I posted about this a while ago. This is something that has been on my mind, is that sometimes, silence is almost like you're agreeing, or there comes a point when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, there comes a point when silence is betrayal. And, this is something I've always been vocal about and talked about and stood for, but I think it's more important than ever to use your platform to talk about these things, because it feels like we're at this breaking point where if we really put our foot on the gas and unite, we could see real progress that hasn't happened in hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I pray not, back to the cycle, everybody moves on and nothing changes. Um, I believe that if we do raise our voices, if we do unify, if we set aside all of our differences, and if we don't look at, you know, what we thought we knew and educate ourselves on what's really going on, we could make a change.
Hmm.
But it starts with us saying, okay, I'm going to sacrifice for a cause because of my belief in Christ and my love for humanity and other people. It's bigger than us, man. I mean, you lose followers, you lose supporters, so
Yeah.
be it. You face persecution, so be it. The reality is that there are people who are facing systemic racism. There are people who are facing unjust treatment, prejudice, a broken justice system, police brutality, not by choice, but just because of the skin they're in. And I think that the least that, especially to anybody who's Caucasian in this time, the least that you can do is at least stand with these people, because that's not something you're directly walking through, but make that sacrifice to at least speak up and unite during this time frame. And I continue to, mourn with and pray with everyone in these situations where we keep losing people, and we pray for their families. And it's heartbreaking because, again, go back to Eric Garner, to the situation we had with George Floyd, which, rest in peace to both of these gentlemen. But like, even that sentence, "I can't breathe," the fact that years later that's still something that happens,
Yep.
and that's still an issue. The people who are called to protect, called to serve. I mean, yeah, this is a subject. It could be its own whole
Yeah.
thing, but
Could
it's,
be its own podcast, but man,
yeah.
yeah, we
My
need.
call to, what I keep saying to the zealots is just like, unity. Jesus said, "They will know that you follow me by your unity."
Yeah.
So get out of your own, educate yourself. There's plenty of resources. I try to use my platform to post them. There's so many other people who are posting and using their platforms. Learn as much as you can. Have conversations. Open your eyes. To everybody who's facing this directly, keep your head up. I'm so sorry that you have to keep walking through this. We're with you. We love you. That's the reality. Is we just have to be unified and pray that, God sees us through these difficult times.
Amen. Well, man, thank you for your voice and your platform and using your influence to talk about that stuff. At Crossover Church, this is something that we've regularly talked about, as our
Mm,
church is, super diverse. But especially during this season, we've had multiple things that we've been doing. We did a big prayer walk recently because our neighborhood was the center of some of the looting and the burning in Tampa, and
mm,
we actually shut down the block and walked. The police shut down the block for us, and we walked down to the mall and we prayed in the same exact spot where all the
pow-
conflict was, and it was a powerful, really powerful moment. And so, but yeah, we've been having lots of conversations at the church about it on our platforms. We've been doing every Wednesday night like a Zoom. We did it with some police officers and top city officials. We're doing it with activists. We're doing it with some local churches. So we had some of the biggest churches in the city come and walk with us on the prayer walk, and so it's a special moment, and we pray that during this moment that there is real systemic change. It's a catalyst for that to really happen. And there's been a lot of conversations we've been in with the city and with business leaders and faith leaders here in Tampa, and I know that's happening in places all over. So we're hopeful. Yeah. We're encouraged. And although it's been a tough season and, it's just been, more lives lost and more violence and all this stuff, we're praying that there really will, like you said, in this moment, man, it could be that catalyst for there to be change that would be permanent, where everybody really could be equal. So, well, man, thank you for being on today, bro. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you at Flavor Fest again in the future.
When I'm always down. Whenever you need me, just hit my line, bro.
I know, man. I know. So pray. We're praying that we can have Flavor Fest, but, we just have to see what's happening with everything. It's everything is kind of up in the air right now, right? But, hey, man, why don't you pray for everybody that's been listening and that's been watching this podcast today. I always ask my guests to just close us out in a word of prayer. There's a lot of artists out there that are listening. There's church planners, there's pastors, there's entrepreneurs, there's people that are creating movements. And so just, man, pray a blessing upon them, bro.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. All right, Lord, we come before you in this moment. There's always sin. There's always pain and heartache that goes on in the world. There's death and destruction all around us all the time. But in this season, Lord, things are really hard. We're facing situations as a nation, as a planet that, are breaking us down. And God, we ask you, one, that you be a part of these situations where you would bring us peace and you would bring us solutions. You would help us, give leaders wisdom in these movements, people who are leading the charge, standing up, every single individual who's joining into these, outcries of justice, people who are focused on daily ministry. I pray for Pastor Tommy, God, and Lord, all of Crossover, God, that you continue to anoint them and be with them and guide them as they reach out to the community as much as they can during these times. Pray that you continue to heal and restore. I pray for everybody under the sound of my voice right now who's listening, that you would awaken in them that fire and that hunger and that determination to pursue the calling you've given them. They have a goal that's in their mind. They have a calling that you've placed in their heart, a vision, something that keeps them up at night and wakes them up early in the morning, God. I pray that they would have the tenacity and the courage to forget about any limits, any negativity that people have poured into them, anything in the system or world around them that tries to hold them back, that they would have the courage to jump for it, to go for it, and to give 150% all the time to what you called them to do. God, you give us each a gift when we get to this planet, something that we are required and responsible to give to the world because it's something you placed in us to make the world a better place and to impact people with your gospel and your message. I pray that you would ignite that fire in all of us. Help us to continue to run the course, that we would stay focused on you, that we would continue to work hard and put you first and give you all the glory anytime there's any breakthrough or success. Trust you in the hard times, praise you in the good times. We love you so much, God, and we continue to unite during these moments, even as we're all listening to this right now. We're unified in Christ, and we're going to continue to move forward for the kingdom. We pray all this in your mighty name, Jesus. Amen. And bro, I want to thank you before we get off. Just appreciate you having me. I'm always humbled to be a part of it. I'm probably going to be in Tampa again soon, and I would love to hang out. But thank you for bringing me on. I have so much respect for you and what you're doing. Continue to lead the way, bro. And everybody might have heard me say zealots a lot on here. A zealot is somebody who's radical and uncompromising in their belief. I encourage you, be a zealot for Jesus. Be a zealot for what you believe in. Yeah. Be a zealot for cause. Be a zealot for your goals. And one thing I encourage, every time I end a live video, a concert, a YouTube video, whatever, I always end it like this. This is something I encourage people with, this manifesto, that as a follower of Christ, as a zealot, as somebody who he's called and given a purpose to on this earth, it's your responsibility to stand up and stand out, be different in order to make a difference. And remember, we are the zealots and we will change the world.
Listen, I'm super excited to see what God is going to do next with Zauntee's life, with his ministry, with his music, with his platform. I mean, he is just getting started. So what's going to happen in the next couple years, it's going to be exciting. The shout out to all the zealots that joined us here on the podcast, the Zauntee movement, the followers, the fans, the family. Thank you guys for tuning in. And hey, if you're new to the podcast, if you guys are watching on YouTube, subscribe to it. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, jump in, subscribe, like, comment, share this with some other people. We got incredible artists on here. We got leaders, entrepreneurs, pastors, church planners, people that are creating movements. And so listen, coming up next week, speaking of movements, we got somebody that actually created several different movements, and he's somebody that's poured into me. Just like I had an opportunity to pour into Zauntee somewhat, and he shared that, this guy's poured into me. Because even when you're a pastor, you gotta have people that are pouring into you. And so this guy's been in that position in my life for probably about 15, 16 years. He started Urban Youth Workers Institute out in Los Angeles. Over 20,000 urban youth workers have been trained through their organization, through their conferences, through their resources and their different events that they do. Last year, he passed the baton to somebody else that took over. And now he's actually leading a church planting organization in Los Angeles. And so God is using this guy in incredible ways. He's a spiritual dad to me and to so many other guys. His name is Larry Acosta. Some of you guys already know. If you've been following Flavor Fest, he's been several times. He's poured into you guys. So tune in next week. You don't want to miss Larry Acosta on the Flavor Fest Urban Leadership Podcast. Let's go. Thanks for tuning into the Flavor Fest Urban Leadership Podcast. Stay connected with us on social media at UrbanD813 and at Flavor Fest. We'll talk to you guys next week. Peace and God bless.